I am David Ford, and I take an enormous amount of delight in churches. A frequent view when looking at a church for the first time is through the Lych Gate, and this particular one shows us the church at Bromfield in Shropshire. One of the characteristics of village churches is their peace and quiet. This one at Great Durnford in Wiltshire I was able to enjoy for about an hour, and not another soul interrupted my visit. Although most churches are Gothic or classical in style, a few are very different, such as this Italian-style church at Wilton. The Countess of Pembroke was instrumental in the building of this church, and was willing to lavish much expense in its creation, as this passageway to a side door shows. Another unusual church is Boston Stump in Lincolnshire. Although Gothic, it has a tower that is exceptionally tall in relation to its nave. From the top of this tower, marvellous views occur over the fen countryside. Another unusual church is that at Chesterfield, with its crooked spire. It was created by the wood warping soon after the spire was built. Mickleham Church is in Surrey, and like a lot of village churches is built of a local material, and in this case it is flint. My next image shows the church at Standing in West Sussex, with its unusual checkerboard pattern on the tower. Bath Abbey is one of my favourites. It has two splendid carved ladders on either side of the west window, with angels ascending towards heaven. Above the doorway is King Henry VII, the monarch when the abbey was completed. This image of Newcastle was taken from the Sage Building in Gateshead, across the River Tyne. To the left is the unusual crown steeple of Newcastle Cathedral. The classical church, centre right, is interesting as it has a round nave, but what makes it rather special is that it has a section of its wall that can be removed to allow large objects to enter or leave the church. The location of some churches is extraordinary. This is Wembley Church on the Lizard Peninsula, and is located so close to the sea that frequently sand is brought in by high tides and high winds and blocks the entrance to the church. Another unusual feature is that the tower is separate from the main part of the church. Churches tend to be the tallest building in towns and villages, but occasionally it is possible to look down on a church, as shown in this image of the church next to Stokesay Manor in Shropshire. External features of churches provide interest. This is the door knocker of the Norman church at Abbey, which is part of metropolitan Leeds, and shows a man being eaten by a bear. Stone carvings are a common feature around churches, and this little musician, which reminds me very much of one of Snow White's dwarfs, is to be seen at North Cadbury in Somerset. And now another delightful and imaginative Norman carving, this time from the little church of Holt in Wiltshire. Wembley Church is typical of the interior of many large rural churches, with a nave, a chancel and two side aisles. But many churches have had to be adapted for their particular location. Kirknewton Church is close to the Scottish border, an area of considerable lawlessness in the past, so has been built with thick walls for protection. Many Catholic churches are full of decoration and religious images, as the interior of this Catholic church at Bethnal Green shows. Large churches often have very elaborate vaulting. This wonderful example of fan vaulting is from Sherborne Abbey in Dorset. Some church ceilings come as a great surprise. This ceiling is from the classical church of King Charles the Martyr at Tunbridge Wells, and has galleries round the side providing really good views of the excellent plasterwork. The magnificence of some interiors is overwhelming. This image shows the Lady Chapel end of Winchester Cathedral, and is lacking visitors, as I was there during the wedding of Prince William. The wonderful leaf carvings at Southwell in Nottinghamshire are so famous that a whole book has been devoted to them. The passage above the main arcading is called the Triforium, and provide a very different view of a church, as these two examples from Gloucester Cathedral show. The altar is the main focus of many church services, and behind this is a reredos. These are often richly carved. This one is from Boston in Lincolnshire. Sometimes a reredos is an amazing wooden carving. This one is in Bury Church in West Sussex. Another form of reredos is a triptych. This example from Newark in Nottinghamshire has religious paintings. When not required, the triptych is folded close. The head of the church is the sovereign, and their coat of arms are displayed. Normally this is a painted board, but occasionally, as in Temple Gighting in Gloucestershire, it is an elaborate stone carving. Another lavish coat of arms is from Belford, an unpretentious church close to the Scottish border. Many churches have elaborate and intricately carved screens which separate the nave from the chancel. The second image of this same screen from Lustley in Devon shows in detail the level of carving skill. Devon churches are particularly noted for their wonderful screens, and this example with wooden fan vaulting is from Chagford Church on the east side of Dartmoor. A church of much delight is that of St Saviour's in Dartmouth, and this is part of their painted screen. Some screens can be quite modern. This one is in Leicester Cathedral. In ancient times there was frequently a rood loft above the screen for musicians and singers during the service. Most of these have been removed, but some, such as this one at Hubberholm in the Yorkshire Dales, is still partially intact. If screens are dismantled, sometimes part of the screen is recycled, in this case as a door in Lustley Church. Other screens are recycled to provide decoration elsewhere in the church. This example comes from Hereford Cathedral, and the next from Lustley Church in Devon. In some grand churches, such as this example from Truro Cathedral, this stone carved row of what are called nodding ogis separate the chancel from the side aisle. Metal can also be used as a screen. This example from Boston Stump in Lincolnshire separates the tower area from the back of the church. A number of churches have curious features. Fireplaces occasionally occur in small chapels to provide warmth for the lord of the manor, but this unusual one in Hereford Cathedral was to provide heat for the cathedral as a whole, and as such it fails miserably. Hereford Cathedral also has this giant organ. Note however the large wheels, so that it can be moved around. Many bench ends, particularly in the chancel, display wonderful carvings. This is in the Priory Church at Lancaster, and below this poppy head bench end is an inset of carved acorns. Cathedrals often display the extreme skill of woodcarvers. This one of two monkeys and the one of two tumblers are in Winchester Cathedral. Carving a hippo or a rhinoceros on its own would be difficult enough, but this carver has achieved both on a bench end. The church is St Nicholas in Arundel in West Sussex. This bench end of two charming little dogs is taken from Boston Stump in Lincolnshire. Bench ends are frequently richly carved. The pelican is pecking at his breast to release blood, to symbolise blood atonement. This is the only carved bench end I have ever seen which is not completed. Did the carver for this church at Clun in Shropshire go on strike, or perhaps he died before completing the work? Another source of much delight is in the workmanship of needlework, as shown in the kneelers at Marazion Church in Cornwall. Between the back stalls in the chancel are enjoyable carvings. This little figure from Worcester Cathedral appears to be on a slide. This jester separates stalls in Hereford Cathedral. And this cartoon-style deer comes from Boston Stump. There is a children's TV series called Barney, based on a dinosaur, and this image from Ripon Cathedral reminds me of Barney. The brilliantly carved figure of a man selling cherries comes from Sherborne Abbey. Misericords are frequently sources of imaginative carving. The owl and also the bear on a chain both come from Hereford Cathedral. This poor peasant, double back and hands tied, comes from Winchester Cathedral. The bench above this scene of cooking provided some support for the behind, for those required to stand for long church services. Grapes from the Promised Land is on a Ripon Cathedral misericord, and from the same cathedral is St. Cuthman conveying his mother in a wheelbarrow. The axle broke when he arrived at Senning, and St. Cuthman saw this as a sign from God to plant a church. This recalcitrant youngster, being Birch, comes from Sherborne Abbey. In front of choir stalls are panels, frequently richly carved, as in this example from Chagford Church in Devon. Also from a Devon church, but this time Drew Stainton, comes 3 wonderful carvings taken from nature. Important clerics conducting a service sit on magnificent carved chairs. This one comes from Worcester Cathedral. Floral decorations and flower festivals provide colour in many churches, as these few examples show. Some were specially created for weddings. These images of flowers bring me to the end of my talk. I hope you've enjoyed it.